The universe is a very, very mysterious place. And I don't have it figured out. I wouldn't pretend to. And I think anybody that does say they have it figured out is a fool. Well, the name of the piece is Desert Timeline. And it's carved out of black slate on a red sandstone base. And when I was growing up in southern New Mexico, up until the age of probably 21 or 22, whenever we'd see a rattlesnake, it was just normal to kill it. And down there were mainly western diamondbacks, and some of them quite large. And none of us thought twice about killing them with livestock around. And I was home from college and out riding one of our horses, and there was a rattlesnake that was probably within 10 or so feet of me, and I stopped the horse to get down because he had shied away from it and I was going to kill it. And I just stopped in my tracks and thought, why should I do this? And it was one of those moments where you just do a double take, and I mean, this snake was out here harming no one, no livestock around other than us, and we were moving on. It made no sense. So that was the beginning of a truce with rattlesnakes. And as I said before, we've relocated over 100 in the last 19 or 20 years at our place. I wanted to do a piece that would lay down a specific marker in time with past and present. And so on one side of this divide of time, I had carved what is portrayed as a living rattlesnake, and then when it goes back into the side of the slate, it turns into a fossil, and you can see the fossilized vertebrae. And I carved the layers of the sediments in there to help portray a fossil. So that was the beginning of the idea. Well, the people that influenced me in terms of stone carving are probably first and foremost my mentor, Boris Gilbertson, who I met in 1980 and, in Santa Fe. And George Carlson introduced us to Boris and Charlotte. Charlotte was Boris's significant other. And so Cindy and I were living about a block away from them, block and a half away. We were introduced to them, and it changed our lives. And Boris was a stone carver, but at that point in his life, he was not in very good health. But so we only knew him 2 years before he died, but we knew Charlotte for 22 years. And I worked in Boris's studio after he died in 1982, and still use a lot of the tools that were his, air hammers that Charlotte had given him in the 1930s. And he carved some beautiful pieces. One in particular is at the Department of Interior in Washington, D.C., 13-foot by 5-foot panels, one of bison and one of moose. Then the other people that indirectly influenced me were Jose de Kraft, a direct carver. Boris was a direct carver also. William Zorach and John Flanagan. They were all direct carvers. And direct carving basically is taking a stone, finding a stone, and drawing directly on it with chalk or some other marker, and then just start carving. And it's not done with a model and point-up machine. It's all very intuitive and direct. And that's the beauty of it and the challenge of it. that really intrigued me and has kept me interested in it for 32 years. Well, Silent Messenger is a piece that I had to do, I don't know, it's been 8 or 10 years ago, of a raven, human-sized, in a red sandstone sarcophagus. And that whole thing weighs about 6,000 pounds also. So I saw the raven as a metaphor for nature, basically, and our relationship to nature. And it's in the sarcophagus, and the lid is standing next to it, and its beak is over the edge of the sarcophagus. The lid has human handprints on it, and basically that piece is really straightforward too. I mean, we have a choice whether we put, the bird is still alive. There's still hope. And so we have, yes, us humans have so much power over everything. I mean, 7 billion of us, that's a lot of power. We have the choice of whether that lid goes on or not. And if it does go on, is that irreversible? Does it suffocate nature, the natural world? The sculpture fracking is made out of sandstone, weighs about 6,000 pounds, and it's a column of sandstone that's been fractured all the way through. It's about 9.5 feet tall, and then it's got 7 rattlesnakes that are coming down through the fracture and into the base. But on top, there's a big steel plate with a hole in it, and one of the tails of the rattlesnake goes through that. That is symbolic of directional drilling. From a single platform now, numerous wells can be drilled using one borehole and then going off in different directions. So that piece represents that, plus the fracking fluids, which is why I used rattlesnakes. The idea of an entity that can be benign in certain settings and dangerous in another setting. And there are a lot of unknowns. There are a lot of fracking fluids that go in there that the public is not aware of. And I did quite a bit of research on it and found out what's going on with a lot of that. And it can be, you know, death by a million cuts if we're not careful. This happened in the early 70s, and I was disillusioned with school. I had changed my major to art. Hitchhiked back to New Mexico to see my folks, southern New Mexico. And while I was there, I had seen an article in a magazine about an O'Keeffe show, and had the wild idea, oh, well, I should go see her on my way back up to Fort Collins. So I hitchhiked up to Santa Fe and then on to Abiquiu, and got out in Abiquiu, and I had a backpack and walked up to the house, and nobody was around there, so I went around to the side. There's a big window, and to see if anybody was there, and she saw me and waved me around to the other side, and came around to the gate, and she had a chow dog with her, if I remember right, and was just very terse and not very friendly. And I had told her that I was an art student, wanted to talk to her, and I had some questions, and I was not very forceful at all. I mean, I was polite, and she said she didn't have time, and I left and went back down to the road, and a logger, he had an old truck with a flatbed, chainsaws in the back, picked me up. So I went up the road about 30, 40 miles, and the longer I went, the more that I thought that I was justified in going back and in a low-level way, maybe demanding that she talk to me. I hitchhiked back, and it was late in the afternoon, and went back up to her place, and she must have seen me somehow because she came out, and it was a 180. She was just as friendly as she could be. And I explained why I came back, and she had done a complete reversal in terms of talking to me and invited me to come in and have something to eat. And we had some kind of a stew and some homemade bread, talked about some of my art history teachers, and she told me how wrong they were. Kind of unlike me at that age, I asked her about her flower series and all the sexual connotations that were tied up in terms of what our teachers had told us about all that. And she just thought it was ridiculous and didn't see it that way. She just loved flowers, and she loved fields of color and color schemes and being able to break up the canvas that way. It was probably, I don't know, hour and a half, something like that. She said I could stay the night, and being an idiot, I said, no, I don't want to impose on you. And I should have taken her up on it and stayed and conversed more. It would have been really interesting. Well, the place we live is Redstone Canyon, 13 miles west of Fort Collins. And it is a red stone, it's sandstone, and the cliffs around our place are 150, 200 feet high. And we live right in the bottom of the canyon, and Redstone Creek comes through. And I get a lot of the stones that I carve from the bottom of the canyon. But they have come from overburden and upstream, a lot of granite and schist, harder stones. But the inspiration for a lot of my work at this point comes from the animals that are there, and we try to minimize our impact on them. So we live with cougar, mountain lion, and we see bobcat on a regular basis. We have wildlife cameras set up, so we not only see them, but we also are more aware of their presence because of the wildlife cameras. And we'll see coyotes and quite a few black bears with cubs, elk, and a lot of mule deer, and a lot of prairie rattlesnakes, which we've relocated over 100 in the last probably 19, 20 years. So we try to live within the area without great impact on them. They were there first, so we try to accommodate them as much as we can. I've been working in this vein for 32 years in terms of trying to point out, at least from my perspective, that we're not the center of the universe, and that our animal brethren have just as much right to exist and have a quality of life as we do. And we're not, as a species, looking at things in a long enough term. We're very short-sighted. And our impact is, we have a lot of unintended consequences in terms of what we do. And it's little things and big things that we all do. And just being alive, we have an impact. But nonetheless, we can try to minimize that and be better stewards